We hope you had a wonderful and safe holiday, and we're so glad you're back with us today for our first episode of 2023. If you are viewing the video version of our podcast, you may notice that we're not in our studio. That is because we're excited to deliver our first ever off-site podcast recording held at Gallery Furniture, courtesy of today's guest, Jim McIngvale, Mattress Mack, and his daughter, Dr. Elizabeth McIngvale, Liz as she prefers.
What I want us to hear that my dad and I share, and the sentiment in all of our families, is go out and help someone. And so when someone is struggling, whatever they're struggling with, you would not believe the power it will have and the impact it will have on your life when you're just there. The job of a community is to band together to make a difference that's greater, right? It's a greater good purpose. When we're living in isolation or in silos and we don't want to talk about crime or we don't want to talk about the problems because we're scared or, we don't want people to think this of us, that's long-term damage.
Although Mack has been a local Houston icon for many, many years as the owner of Gallery Furniture and a large philanthropist, he recently garnered national attention for winning $75 million in total sports betting payouts, the highest total in sports betting history, when the Astros won the 2022 World Series. His daughter, Dr. Elizabeth McIngvale, is the founder of Peace of Mind, a nonprofit organization for people with obsessive-compulsive disorder. She herself was diagnosed with OCD at the age of 12, and at age 18 became the national spokesperson for the International OCD Foundation. Mack's passion for community service has infiltrated his family, and that was abundantly evident throughout our conversation with him and Liz. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with the McIngvales. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Rania and Jenn.
Welcome to the Balanced Voice podcast. We are thrilled to be on location. My co-host,
Jennifer Holman.
We are so excited. Rania Mancaria, CEO of Crime Stoppers, and we're here at Gallery Furniture, 45 North, with the one and only Jim
Mattress
McIngvale.
Mack right here. I'm not shy.
You didn't need us. I needed to be like triple mic'd. He did it. And Dr. Elizabeth McIngvale. We'll be calling her Liz today. Welcome,
Thank
Liz.
you. Thanks for having us.
We're so excited.
We are.
So Jen and I wanted to have a conversation and really touch on what's going on in Houston, what's going on in the world. Look at the spirit of community service, obviously touch on mental health. And honestly, there was no two people in the world that we thought of beyond you two. So we want to start with you, Mac. First of all, you spoke at our gala last week. One of the most moving things that I've heard probably ever. And I loved it because you spoke about your dad and about growing up and the principles that your father instilled with you. Will you share just a little bit about that with us today?
Sure. My parents, my mother and father always taught me that right was right and wrong was wrong. And my parents taught me that it was better to give than receive. That was the way they lived their life. My parents wouldn't have thought of going on a vacation without us kids in 1,000 years. We were the high point of their life, and then it was church and community, and their whole life was a life of service. So I was lucky enough to receive that type of parenting and tried to pass it on to her. But she's very lucky. She takes after her mother, not after me.
What do you mean takes after her mother?
Yeah,
Well, she's better looking. She's smarter. Gets things done.
Liz, how do you feel? Did your grandparents instill the same? Did they tell you the same things?
For sure. I think that one of the things that all of us as kids that are McIngvales are givers, and that's just how we were really raised. But some of the memories that I have is Christmas, Thanksgiving. It wasn't about what did we get and, serving ourselves. It was about the fact that we went to George R. Brown with our parents and we served the homeless. We took kids in from foster care and they would come. And our highlight of Christmas was getting to go with my mom Christmas Eve and buy them gifts and watch them open it the next morning. We were taught our entire life that it is so much better to give than to receive, but more importantly, that when you serve others, you're really serving yourself. And I think that's the message and the gift that the world is missing today.
I agree. I have to tell you, we have a story. So when I was young, it was back in the days you were in tents. My first furniture set came from here. It was black lacquer, if that tells you how old I am. So my parents were going to shop nowhere else but with Mac. So
God bless them.
So let's talk about, who you are in our community. Anyone in Houston, you just say Mac, they know exactly who you're talking about. But interestingly enough, when I have conversations with people outside of Texas, they say, hey, do you know that guy, Jim McIngvale? I say, I've been blessed to know him and recently be working with him. Did you know coming into it when you were building this business and you were going and speaking to elementary schools? You spoke to my husband's elementary school 30 years ago. Our chairman of the board, you spoke to his elementary school in Katy 20 years ago. Did you know what this was going to become for you as a person?
No, I just know that you were aging me, Rania. Terribly. It was just something that I enjoyed doing, talking to young people, and I did a lot of work with the DARE program, the Say No to Drugs program with Chuck Norris and a lot of those people back then. It was part of my civic duty, I thought, to give back, and I've probably been in 5,000 schools over the last 40 years, so a lot of people heard me speak, and a lot of people come up and say that it had a profound impact on their life, and that kind of gratifies me that maybe I've done something good with my life.
Mac, it's not, so we share a friend, Kathy Griffin. I'm an advocate for girls that have been trafficked for sex or children, and I called her before this, and I said, I see her with you every once in a while, and I said, tell me what he does, Kathy, and she said, Jen, it's not just about anti-trafficking, it's homelessness, it's domestic violence, it's every issue that we face with at Precinct 1.
Substance abuse.
The
disabled. She literally went down a list of all the different areas you're touching.
Right. So tell me this, I think when you look at how you give, it wasn't to build a business. I think giving was your core and building a business was on the side. That's how I feel when I look at your family.
Yeah, I grew up watching TV commercials in Dallas. This guy named Art Grindle, he was a car salesman. And he'd jump on top of the car and say, I want to sell you a car. That's how I learned to be a huckster. But every year at Christmas time, he'd give away like 10 used cars to needy people. So I always said if I ever made any money, we'd give away furniture. And so Linda, Liz's mother, and myself started giving away furniture the second year with housefuls of furniture giveaway at Christmas. And we got more out of that than we put into it. And that tradition's continued for 40 odd years. So we're lucky to have Liz and her sister Laura and her brother James and her adopted sisters Ileana and Regina in the family. And we try to teach everybody that the essence of living is giving. John Paul II said it's better to give than receive. So that's what we're trying to do.
And I love it. And if you follow Mac on Twitter, you're constantly posting verses, which I love. You're very, you're not shy about your faith, which it means a lot. And Liz, let's talk about your journey. I mean, we've been following you for many years. You've had really important conversations about mental health and wellness. You're doing incredible work in the community. Nationally, really, you're making a difference. But share a little bit about that.
Yeah, basically, I was 12 years old. We were right here in Houston. We grew up more in a north suburb near the Woodlands. And, as many people know, we were a well-connected family. And so I always talk about that in the story just because when we think about how difficult it was for me to get access to the right help and care, we really need to think about what it's like for most people, right? And for people who don't have the opportunities to make certain phone calls or to afford treatment at the cost that it is. But really, I started struggling when I was 12. And one of the things I always struggled with was, or questioned, I should say, is, stigma. There's so much stigma around mental health, around living with a mental illness, around treatment for mental illness, and around management and what it looks like later.
She corrects me to this day.
Yeah, I do. There are times he needs a little lesson. But, it's one of those things that with my parents, and again, this is all about who they are, right? This essence of giving. When I got sick, my parents had every opportunity to get me treatment, not talk about it, keep it a private matter, as people say, and move on.
Yeah.
And my dad and my mom's viewpoint was, but if Liz's story can help someone else, wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
Because imagine if someone else's story could have helped us sooner, right? Yeah. Maybe I wouldn't have needed the level of treatment I needed. Maybe my OCD wouldn't have gotten so severe. Maybe I wouldn't have become suicidal. And so, for us, the second I got sick, yes, it was a mission to sort of figure out how to treat myself, right? How to get me treatment and get me well. But it was also an opportunity for us to say, this is another chance to serve others and to kind of take our pain and turn it into a purpose, and a purpose that's bigger than us. And I think that's where this combination of service to others and faith really is the hallmarks of the McIngvale family, is that we've always believed that God doesn't give you something you can't handle, and that there's good things that can come out of tremendous struggle and tremendous difficulties. And when you can look at it from that lens, you're able to turn bad into good.
How did you do that? How did you move into, and how old were you when you moved into that place of, I've got to address what I've got going on here, but I also want to help the community? How old were you, and how old were you?
I think that one thing needs to be said is that Liz would not be where she is today. God only knows where she had her mother not been a tireless advocate for her. And all these psychiatrists told us to put Liz in a mental institution for the rest of her life and to give up on her. But, her mother would never give up on her. And now her mother's very ill, and Liz is the advocate for her mother. So, things come full circle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so right now, we talked before this, we were talking about the challenges. It feels like we still don't have enough capacity for children and adults with mental illnesses, the clinics that are needed, both in trafficking and with some of the OCD stuff that you deal with. So what do you do? What do you think is going to need to be done?
Goodness. I wish I knew the answer to that. I was thrown into advocacy when I was 17. My parents were helping host the Bush-Clinton Tsunami Fund, and they were raising money for the tsunami. And my dad, Dr. Phil was there. My dad just kind of said, you know what? My daughter has OCD. Let's go on your show and talk about it. It was like, wait, what? None of us were ready. We were all like, I don't know what's happening. And I was still really sick at the time, honestly. I was in the throes at that point. I don't think, like you asked a question of, was I ready? Like, how did I transition from treatment to advocacy? I wasn't really there yet, to be honest. I didn't even know what it looked like to manage my symptom, to live a life with OCD, but have the life I want. That took many years. I don't know that I figured that out until more recently, to be honest. But what I learned is that when I started to talk about it and help other people, and just like my dad's talking about with his speeches, the first person that told me sharing my story made them realize they weren't alone. Or me sharing my story stopped them from taking their life or encouraged them to seek treatment. That made my battle worth it. Doesn't mean I wanted it, right? I would do anything to not have my illness, but it made me say, okay, there is a purpose bigger than what I can see or comprehend that can come out of this, that can be some good. And so I really started to make that my life mission, my career, right? I ended up going to school and getting my degrees and doing everything to focus in this arena. And what I have found along the way is that our entire system is broken. We often send the message that if you live with a mental health condition, you're disabled. I am not a believer in disability for most mental health conditions, at least not long term. And the reason why is because what would it have been like if my parents would have sent the message to me that, Liz, you're broken. Liz, you're disabled. Liz, because of your diagnosis, you are going to always struggle and never have the life you want. What a disservice that would have been to myself and to the people I can now serve.
One of the tenets of the family is the work is life's greatest therapy. And when she found out that helping people battle their OCD or their anxiety disorders was, she found out that work was her therapy. Is that right?
That's right.
And work is life's greatest therapy. And one of the things we're involved in now, after my anecdotal service of the last 42 years, is that we can help these people get jobs, find a job they love to do, and they never have to work a day in their life. That would solve a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
That's so great.
Totally.
Remember that. Work is life's greatest therapy. I think we need to take that tagline and make it international.
And what I love is I was just walking around and it's written on one of the walls in this building. So if you're, in the area and can come to Gallery Furniture on 45 North, one, you're going to see a piece of history. You're going to see obviously all this furniture and incredible things, but there's motivational messages wherever you turn, and that one caught my eye. Yeah, because I actually believe that it is very motivating.
Yeah, we had her favorite one was up here. So I think somebody painted over it. Without my struggles, I would not know my strength.
Oh, I love that.
I love that too. And so, do you have these tenets that y'all all know and repeat to each other?
I know. I was going to say,
how did y'all do this?
We sure do. So let's talk about those.
It is to me. It's up to me. If you want something done, go do it yourself.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Okay.
Every dinner, every week, we had family dinner, and we recited that. My sister, brother, and I. And
I love that.
I will promise you,
like multiplication drills,
It was multiplication drills, but it was motivation drills. But I will tell you, I was a competitive gymnast, and I cannot tell you how many times I would repeat some of those mantras when I was trying to learn a new skill, or you were failing and you had to keep trying and figure it out. What people need to know is that every person needs a purpose. And when you look at amazing facilities like Brookwood, I don't know if you know about Brookwood, it's this incredible facility for individuals with severe disabilities, but one of the things that they do that we love so much is that it's about giving. They have jobs, right? There's jobs for your skill set that work.
Paraplegics have a job.
You have a purpose.
Right.
You get up in the morning and you have something you get to feel good about, a difference you get to make, a purpose for what you're doing. every person in the world deserves to have that. And unfortunately, there's many times that systems, insurance, other things have stopped us from being able to give that opportunity to people. And instead of us worrying about, in my opinion, right, disability and all these other things, let's worry about giving people opportunities to have a purpose.
Right, whether big or small.
Doesn't matter what your purpose is. Right. Every purpose is big, right? Small ones are huge, big ones are huge, right? And that's what I tell people when people talk about advocacy. Well, how do I start? Advocacy doesn't start on national television.
Yeah.
Advocacy starts with your mom's doctor.
That's right.
It starts with, advocating for what someone needs in that moment that can be on a one-to-one individual basis. And that's where the biggest differences are made.
Thank you to our Season 5 sponsor, FlipLock, for making this episode possible. FlipLock was created as a nationwide, straightforward solution to protect your people, whether it be in universities, dorms, daycares, hospitals, or even government buildings. We're proud to have such a strong and like-minded sponsor this season. Check out FlipLock at fliplock.com. That's FLIPLOK.com.
We were talking about meeting with you, and there's so many things that, as you admire about your family, we're like, this is a family that truly lives what they say they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And how do we get them, or what do you think we need to do to inspire the rest of the community to engage on the many issues that we're facing, whether it's homelessness or domestic violence or OCD or mental health,
public safety, which is one that you've championed this past year, if not more.
How do you think we should continue to engage? How do you, besides what y'all do together?
I just want to add,
it's the words of John Paul II: "Be not afraid."
Be not afraid.
A lot of people don't do these things. They're afraid. They're afraid to admit that somebody in their family has a mental illness. They're afraid to take a stand on crime when everybody in the whole town wants a safer city. They're afraid to do this, afraid to do that. But, you got to step up and you got to go for it.
Yeah.
But what does it mean? So a lot of people say, look, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Let's say just get engaged. It can be the smallest thing.
You get engaged, you start teaching it. And the first and most important thing, this was at a recent church sermon that I loved, is that we quit looking inside ourselves and we start looking at serving and doing things outside of ourselves. I think the world has become so insular that like, if I'm struggling, I have to figure it out. I need to solve this, or I need to be happy with myself. And it's become so much about me, when the reality is the more we're focused on ourselves, the more we don't even know who we are. Right. And the greatest gift that you will find is when you serve and do things for other people. There is nothing more rewarding than that in the world. There was a perfect example, and I'll go through it quickly, where I was doing a podcast once with Dr. Drew, who's an amazing substance use provider, and one of the things that he was talking about is he said, one of my clients came in, they had these amazing sneakers on. And I said, man, I love your sneakers. And it was a conversation point. And he said, the next day the client showed up and gave me that pair of sneakers. And I said to him, like, oh no, like I wasn't expecting you to go buy me those sneakers. Like that wasn't what I wanted. Like I can't take this as a gift. And he said, the client looked at him and pushed the gift and said, I need you to take this. And he said, but no, I'm not supposed to. And he said, doing this for you today is what's keeping me sober tomorrow.
I love that.
And the thing we have to learn in life is that when we start doing things for other people and we have a purpose, it fulfills our own needs beyond what we would ever understand. And so my response is get connected. Be a part of a community, right? Dr. Bruce Perry, who my dad and I love so much, when we've asked him before, if you could fix America, what would you do? He said, I'd put front porches back on every house.
Oh, wow.
We need connection. We are meant to connect with others, to serve others, to feel, right, human connection. We're not meant to live and breed in isolation.
Human beings were made to live, work, play, and die in groups. 1900, the average size U.S. household, 10.5 people. Currently less than 2, 1 being the loneliest number. At my old high school, Bishop Bunch High School in Dallas, I told them about us feeding communal meals to all these employees here. It's the best thing we've ever done. No cell phones, no iPads. They actually get to meet and know each other. So when their car breaks down, somebody can help them out. They'll show up at work even though they feel bad to help their friend out. And so they put in at this private high school, the largest private high school in Texas, free breakfast, free lunch for all the teachers and all the kids. And they figured it in the tuition. He said it's the biggest change ever in the school.
We were talking on the way here. We both are like village people. Like, if I give me my sister and my mom.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
I'd love him to get a compound. I want him all the time. Yeah, we need to be together.
Living. That needs to come back. Compound living.
And I love actually the sign again in the cafeteria that says no phones, talk to each other. So, and I love that. Right over there.
And I think, if we go back to crime, because I know Dad wants to probably touch on that. Crime is not a political stance.
It shouldn't be.
Right? When we think about what we do and how we serve, we want people to feel safety everywhere you go. When you think about a conversation you and I have, if we don't feel safe, we're not going to share vulnerable things that allow change to happen, right? If I don't feel safe where I'm at and in my own community, how am I going to be able to excel in school, right? If I'm worried about my safety at home, right? There's every single thing you do and every opportunity that we want to give, safety is at the core, right?
Safety
it is a
trust,
basic
right?
need.
Yeah.
Trust comes from it, right?
You can trust somebody, and then if you trust, you can help others.
That's right. And so start creating that. Create it in your home. Teach your kids to give back. Get involved with a local organization. See what that does for you and what that means. Because I've never in my life heard somebody say serving someone else didn't serve me.
Right. I often say that serving others is almost kind of a selfish thing.
Totally.
Because it totally self-fulfills so many things that you need, a desire to feel a part of something. And yeah, it's amazing.
Jim, when you started talking about public safety, was that the most sort of, you didn't get backlash, but sort of resistance? Because all this time, you've been serving the community, you've been serving the physical location where Gallery Furniture is located, you've been servicing your neighbors and the people behind you. You've serviced all of Houston in every named storm, including the big Texas freeze. I mean, you are serving us all the time. Students, there's a school now attached to this building. I mean, it's unbelievable. But you started to talk about crime and public safety.
Well, that's because crime is so bad and it affects people. They can't walk their child in the stroller down the sidewalk in any neighborhood, whether it's River Oaks, Acres Home, East Side, West Side, North Side. The number one thing we need to have in Houston is safety. I had these people call me yesterday and they were buying their last piece of furniture from us because they were moving to Florida. And I said, why are you moving to Florida? They said, it's too dangerous here. Yeah. We got a problem. We got to solve that. That's not good for anybody, no matter if they're on the bottom of the economic rung or the top or in the middle. A safe society is what we all should strive to create.
And it does require all of us. And we're very, very thankful that in the city of Houston, you have your elected officials, you have nonprofits. I think we have more nonprofits here than any major city. And then you have iconic leaders that step in and lend their voice when the city has a crisis. And I think Houston's very lucky for that. So Crime Stoppers has been very, very thankful for your voice in this issue, and so has the community. And I'll also say, Liz, I can't tell you, we deal with families of trauma every single day. It's all we deal with is trauma. And there are a lot of families that are very inspired by the work you do, whether it's trauma in the home or with their children, or the onset of mental health and struggles. And so I wish we could clone and have 100 million of both of you.
You should clone her mother. Her mother would refuse to give up on her. 1,000,000 times her mother could have thrown in the towel. 1,000,000 times. But her mother never gave up. And I offer the same advice to those parents out there struggling with their children. I got a call this morning about a mental health issue of a child. And just don't give up on them. And we must have went to 30 psychiatrists before we found a solution for Liz, and hopefully we can have more advocates for mental health issues and all sorts of issues for people. So if you have a crime problem, you call Crime Stoppers. You have a mental health problem, you call Liz or whoever.
And that is
we need to advocate for each other.
Peace of Mind Foundation, or
that's right.
Is that okay?
It's So it's a nonprofit that I started that's now part of the International OCD Foundations. You can go to iocdf.org for more info, but I'm just like my dad. You can call my clinic and find a way to get a hold of me, and I'll answer your questions personally. My big thing is...
She doesn't give out her cell phone like I do.
I do not do that.
281-844-1963.
He does, and it's legit. It's the same number we get.
Don't call me with any betting tips.
Yeah. Won't be good at that. But, I think at the end of the day, the goal is can we increase access to care for mental health? And we know that if we can do that, it will change the entire landscape of communities, right? Of crime, of of everything. Everything is impacted by mental health. But across the board, that isn't going to happen if we don't start destigmatizing mental illness and mental health. And if we're not willing to talk about it more, and we're not willing to talk about appropriate and effective treatment, right? But again, we can't use mental illness in a negative light. Right. And oftentimes, actually, crime is where mental illness is the most stigmatized.
Yes.
Right? It's always like, let's try to get to the root of this, probably a mental illness here, right? Or what? And what we know is that often, half the times, that's not necessarily a diagnosable mental illness. Those are treatable, right? We can address that. But we've got to really get appropriate education and treatment out there for mental health, but for everything in the community, right? And again, what I want us to hear that my dad and I share, and the sentiment in all of our families, is go out and help someone. And so when someone is struggling, whatever they're struggling with, you would not believe the power it will have and the impact it will have on your life when you're just there.
The ripple effect is amazing.
The job of a community is to band together to make a difference that's greater, right? It's a greater good purpose. When we're living in isolation or in silos, and we don't want to talk about crime, or we don't want to talk about the problems because we're scared, or, we don't want people to think this of us, that's long-term damage.
Yeah.
What I liked about your Crime Stoppers Gala speech, you held people accountable. I think there's very little of that. People are afraid these days because of social media to hold people accountable.
Well,
there's an incident that happened just recently where there is a child that has a child of a famous person, and I refuse to say this child's name, that is probably dealing with some things that people are exploiting online or in news media channels. And I think, your husband was mentioning earlier that called out a news channel for exploiting that story. But you have to hold these people accountable. That's what I loved about your speech, is you weren't criticizing or rude, but you held them accountable for some of the things that are going on with crime in our city. And I think these are the things that y'all's voice can continue, and the community's voice can help hold people accountable. Call them to the table. It's not okay.
That's right. And the thing is it doesn't take you being Mac to hold people accountable. No. We can all do it every single day in our own lives. And we all play a role in this, right? Most of us see someone who's homeless, we turn our shoulder, we don't know how to respond or what to do, when we can give them Star of Hope's card, right? We could give them a bottle of water. We could encourage them to seek treatment. And the reality is we all have to step together and start doing what's right. Because my dad's right. At the end of the day, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
I want to wrap up with this question. We've so enjoyed having you guys. Do you have hope for tomorrow? Are you excited, nervous, a lot of work ahead? Think we're coming together?
Absolutely. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. We don't live in the past, but the past lives in us. I have hope for people like her and other people like her that are out there fighting the good fight. And, we're not going to surrender and throw up the white towel. Houston's a great place, a great city, and we can make it the safest city in the country. All we got to do is put our nose down and work at it.
That's right.
I can't finish on that, though. I have to finish on the baseball game that you went to. Mac, I'm a bit of a well-known cusser. I maybe have a little bit of cuss words. And when you were in Philly, and you had it out, you were duking it out, I was so damn proud of you.
She was petrified of me. She was petrified.
I'm glad you happy. Oh God, bleep Jen. Well, I'm glad you brought it, because I did. What was that like for you? Like when you left and people started talking about it and it became massive.
I didn't know what the effect was. I didn't know somebody filmed it. We left and went back to the hotel. I was having breakfast the next morning with these guys who wanted to play with me, and they were all passing around their cell phones looking at this, so I knew what it was. Yeah, and then the people turned out that they liked, because I stood up for the people in Houston and stood up for Altuve. So that night I was sitting down there by the Astros dugout, and all these rich people from Philadelphia there, and they're all saying, "Don't worry about that guy. We're not like that. We're all good people." Next guy walks by, "Hey, Mattress Mack, F you." I said, "Yeah, you're not like that."
I love it. Anyways, a proud moment. My dad, Rania and I lost our dads within this past year. And so to see the two of you as father and daughter here is
special.
Very special for us. And at the time when you did that, I was like, see, Dad, even Max says the F-bomb. Just saying.
Well, and I'll tell you, I love the way the city responded to you.
Yeah,
I love it. It became a very big thing here that we embraced him.
So here's the question. If we can come together at baseball, which brings Houston better together than anything else, why can't we come together on the big issues? Why Why can't we make people safe? Why can't we make this a better place to live, work, play, and raise a family? We can do that. We just got to focus on it.
That's right. And we have to inspire and encourage the community to get involved, as involved as the McIngvales.
And teach them how, right? And that's where Crime Stoppers comes in. I think most people would say crime's important, but they wouldn't know where to start.
That's
and so
exactly
you
right.
can help guide them on where to start and what to do, and that way they can follow your lead.
Liz, Mac, you guys are just fabulous and wonderful. We thank you for everything.
We do.
I mean, my favorite episode of the season. Guys, thank you. And
Thank
to
you.
everybody who's with us, we'll catch you next time on the Balanced Voice podcast. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Balanced Conversation. You can find real solutions and tangible resources in our show notes at thebalancedvoicepodcast.com. To join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at The Balanced Voice Podcast and on Twitter at @BalancedVoice_. Stay up to date on Rania's work by following her at The Rania Report, and we can't wait to see you next week for another Balanced Conversation.